Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Student of the Game. I am Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game. And listen, if you're here, chances are you like talking sport. We're glad you're doing it with us here tonight. Of course, welcome in. Listen, the NBA Finals are going to be the big story. There's a lot going on with hockey. A Boston team is involved. Therefore, I have an excuse to bring in the great Shukri Wrights. Looking forward to that here coming up at 9:10 here. To get the show off the ground and talk about this isn't necessarily an all things Boston kind of scenario, but this is definitely somebody who writes for the Hockey News. We're going to hear what he has to say about Lord Stanley's Cup. And listen, okay, I'll be honest, it's his Boston tie, and I needed to get a I'm not going to say a Boston fan perspective, because let's be clear, my dude Shu, he's a professional. He's not going to be all that bias and all that stuff and all that, and he'll give you a good analysis about some of the stuff we're going over and a lot of the how you say narratives that are out there heading into, well, we know for a fact that they're in the NBA Finals. Of course, Minnesota delaying what many will say delaying what many Dallas fans are starting to call Thanos, and that it is in fact inevitable. But I wasn't gonna go with this as the intro until I saw more headlines pop up about it, and now that I'm thinking about it here shortly after this, I'm probably going to text a friend of the show, the Orlando Sentinel's Matt Murschel, their senior national college football writer, about everything that's going on with realignment and adjustment and just the general state of college football, college athletics in general, of course, on the totality with realignment, but obviously when we say that, we mostly, college football is where the attention's at in the national showcase, so to speak. But this will affect obviously all sports, and I think that's part of what the problem is that's facing. First of all, I hope all of you love your EA Sports video game, because I can tell you the college landscape is going to look way different than it does in the 24 edition of that Humpy Bumpy. Let me tell you that for a fact. I make jokes all the time on this show about the ACC going away. I had made jokes that were made reality about the Pac-12 going the way of the dodo. We've been having extensive conversations jokes about how conferences can't count, for one, because the Big 12 and Big 10 will certainly have more teams than their titles imply. And the SEC was at least smart enough to avoid counting altogether, with the way their ranks have changed and the way money's changing hands and deals are getting different side with broadcast groups. Well, we're getting to the point now that there's so many lawsuits out there. And by the way, props to Joel Klatt, again, being the best in the business, for help kind of explaining this aspect of it to me. Not that I'm supposed to do this, but if you want more detail about realignment than I've had the opportunity to try to engage, Joel Klatt's a good knowledge base there too. But to hear him providing the angle that litigation and lawsuits are the reason why we're getting to the place where we are, and that place, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact outright pay for play in college athletics. Now, for those that truly wanted to not let it get this far, I'll say this: if the NCAA did a proper job at the time, and I mean decades ago, I suppose at this point, I mean back in the initial surge of the Student of the Game, I was talking with friend of the show, Brandon Howard, the CBS fantasy football editor, about how if colleges did their job and handled the medical bills, for lack of a better way to put it, to handle the medical treatment of players better, in that if my attitude is, if you're a college athlete, once you set foot on campus and participate in a team activity, any sort of sports related issue you have within a sanctioned college event should be handled by the medical team. But that didn't always happen, right? Players would lose scholarships and things like that, even after dealing with a career-ending injury. My attitude is, if injury takes you out of the game, there should be some sort of exception that could be handled to where they get to finish their college, because an athlete like that would get abandoned. And then what do they have after that? There's a lot of stuff. Listen, there was an episode about it on Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. But the reason why I take the time to bring all that up is to say this. The NCAA is in a dire straits because they didn't handle their job. They didn't take care of things like that. They didn't handle medical situations as well for players as they should have. There was no safety net if you suffered a career-ending injury and you were relying on that to get you through college. Part of the reason athletic scholarships were even conceived by the college system such that it is, right? And this predates the NCAA, I think. But the idea is athletics were a part of college to make men and women complete contributors. Now, at the time, because of societal norms, it was mostly men, but this isn't a conversation about the patriarchy. This isn't the Barbie movie, okay? This is green, not pink going on here in the background, okay? But the punchline is the idea was to make people, Renaissance people, who were wise in the ways of academics as well as athletics. Then as athletics got to be a bigger part of the experience where you can get in the door with athletics and then be made a Renaissance man by way of education, that was the idea behind a college scholarship. You're an elite player. You can help the school with your notoriety. We'll take care of that in exchange. You get a degree, you get marketeered. Later on, of course, that would be a bigger part of it as college sports expanded, as college sports became the absolute flippin' juggernaut. Of course, mostly college football, obviously. Let's not mince words here. But now it's evolved to the point where the NCAA handled things so bad that the players found themselves in need of a better, let's say, deal. I don't know that the college athletes would have opted to be straight up paid for play if they were provided the services that could maintain and account for what it was they needed as college athletes. We're here because the NCAA was that bad at doing their job. And why is that? This is the part that Joel Klatt helped me see. All the litigation. Period, point blank, end of story. The NCAA has so many different entities challenging them regularly in court that it would only be a matter of time before something had to be disclosed, before something comes out, before a precedent is set that can ruin this landscape of college sports. They were essentially strong-armed into such a precarious state that now they're talking with schools and organizations about getting paid for play. But this is what's fascinating to me, and though there's no court case or anything like that's going to take place first, something's going to need to get decided. Some things are going to have to happen. You know, there's some talk about whether or not college sports should get an antitrust protection. Some people are talking about trying to find a way to separate revenue sports and non-revenue sports so that the inevitability of Title IX ravishing the landscape, because let me be clear, there's no way organizations with academic organizations, even with an athletic department, which, you know, if they do, they have to be separate entities officially. That's a law somewhere, right? You know, all of that having to be in place, unless some sort of exception is made, there is going to be the best reference I can think of that I think applies is almost kind of a red wedding of college sports, where so many programs are going to be left to the wayside. The only reason why I don't like that example is the example isn't big enough. Right? It's going to be more like Superman in Dawn of Justice, right? Where the entire city is falling apart while Superman and General Zod are doing battle. It'll only be big, powerful entities, while anything else who's collateral may have a building collapse on them in terms of their ability to exist, because Title IX demands equal, resource for all other programs as such. So you can't pay the pro football players one thing or the men's basketball players one thing without having an equivalent organization make the same thing. Football is a little bit weird because it's possible you wouldn't get enough women to participate for a women's football team. That's not something that's really been clamored for at a large enough scale to cause this problem yet. But hey, listen, in a day in 2024 where there's so much conversation about athletes and trans athletes, and that conversation, I'll put it this way: if that goes a certain direction, then you're going to be in a situation where that may come up sooner than later. But I think what we need in all of this, somebody out there is watching as the NCAA is forced into collapsing, into folding, into changing things, and seeing government entities, Congress, things like that stepping in to get involved. I get worried that I shouldn't say get worried, but look, I'll say this. Look out on the horizon, my friends, of the possibility for legal action being brought in for let's just say for another, I don't want to say smaller entity. Smaller isn't the right word, but let's say less popular entity. It's not going to be an empire like the NFL or anything like that, although they have antitrust protections, and that gets a little weird with the way professional sport operates and things like that. But what I see is an example I'll use right now, even though it's not perfect, is the WNBA. Their collective bargaining agreement is such that, and we've been over this on this show, I think the salary cap for all the teams is $2.4 million, something like that, an incredibly low number. Okay. And they can't get out of that until the, what's his word? And until the collective bargaining agreement is done. What if they put together some kind of a movement to where the different teams or different players, not performing a class action, mind you, the class action before that happens, mind you. Sorry about that. Communicating with my guest, Shukri Wrights, will be on shortly. But what if they put together something that has them submitting different court cases? What if Brittany Griner and the Atlanta Dream and the Indiana Fever and all these different entities started to sue the WNBA and started to get the federal government involved? Now, I don't know exactly how that happens, and I'm not saying the WNBA is a good example, but what do we do when we see that coming? Somebody else may take this idea to drag the federal government into another sport. And then what do we do? It gets very confusing very fast. And I'll put it this way. That's a scenario that worries me, because while I'm not saying it's a net negative for college basketball. Let me lead with that. I think what's happening here is meant to be for the good of the future of the sport. There may be people who are going to kick and scream about, the changes that are impending, right? For what we're observing, folks, let me tell you this up front. If you're somebody who says NIL or pay for play should go away, I got bad news for you. It ain't gonna, right? Not going to happen, right? That's not a thing that you're going to see. What it will do is get rid of worries. I shouldn't say worries, of issues that previously existed that was slowing the sport, right? That was leading to backroom deals that were causing problems, right? So, excuse me. So, if in the, I don't want to say the aftermath because we're still building it, but like as these issues are being battled through, that's the good part, right? We're getting to the, we're getting to the inevitable, so to speak, is this whole thing, Thanos scenario. And that was, since the NCAA didn't take care of their business, the players are going to protect themselves and find a way to get protected and get involved. And we don't want to repeat of an organization not doing what they're supposed to. And I take the WNBA as an example because, just as off the top of my head, we saw the example of Caitlin Clark having the preseason game that wasn't televised and somebody holding up a cell phone at the game getting millions of hits. Or the way that WNBA is hidden behind NBA TV and there's not a whole lot of TV rights out there and no adjustment was made for the surge that was pretty much expected by Caitlin Clark. Will that mistake, combined with seeing the example of lawsuits all over the world, give an entity like the WNBA who thinks they're being mishandled a stratagem to get federal government entities involved? Will they be example? And see, it gets weird because the NBA is involved. That's different than having several separate entities like Ed O'Bannon, like the House case and other court cases out there, institutions like Tennessee getting involved. There's a suit up with the kid in Florida now. That's a whole thing. I see this, while net positive for college, being something that has the same effect that the American Revolution may have potentially had on the rest of the world in catching up. Maybe it's not as violent and bloody, but one can only hope. What can I say? I don't know. Hopefully there won't be any slaughters over it. Speaking of slaughters, I had to bring my man who I've known this guy for a long time. I had to bring my man in. I specifically saved him for the NBA Finals. I mentioned Thanos earlier. The reason why I saved him for the NBA Finals is because I knew the Boston Celtics were like Thanos, inevitable, and inevitably you're about to enjoy yourself. Shukri Wrights is in the building, folks. What's going on, my man? Uh-oh. I don't have volume from you, Shukri. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. I'll give you a chance to kind of work through that, Shukri. But anyway, so yeah, I mentioned the inevitable aspect of the Celtics and them getting to the finals the way that they did. And kind of a walk through that too. Like it's not that everyone gives Boston a hard time, and I'm going to talk to us about Shukri in a bit here, but like a hard time about the road they've taken. Let me see. We got you back, Shukri? No, I still don't have sound from you, brother. Shoot. Yeah, you're not. You're muted now. It's not that. Okay. Let me go ahead and knock you back out. So, but the point that everyone's been making about the Boston Celtics is very simple, right? Oh, they had the easy path. Okay. Here's the thing. I will give Boston credit for eliminating the Milwaukee Bucks without a single basketball being dribbled by way of getting Drew Holiday on the roster, right? With that happening, the Bucks had their best defensive player removed and Boston got better. That was something that they took care of in the offseason. I don't think that there's to not give Boston's front office credit for that, for continuing to do that on top of building the awesome roster that they did, is just genuinely dishonest. Now, the injuries they dealt with, I don't know. Let me read Shukri. He says he's ready. Let's give him a shot. Shukri Wrights, what's going on, sir?
What's going on, Kyle? How's it going, man?
Okay, there we go. Welcome in, sir.
I totally forget that I have to actually press the button to turn on my radio mic. So that's completely like my fault. And I'm thinking like, what the hell's going on? Is it me? Or is it the fact that I'm completely inept? And I'm a veteran at this by now, so I should know better. But what's going on, man? How you doing?
It happens to the best of us. I would be lying to you if I did not have similar moments of what in the, I'm glad it's something simple. So we got it fixed in here so we could be off and running. But let me hand the ball to you. I kind of set the table with, I don't care who you are or how you feel about Boston's road to the finals. We're still, in my opinion, not talking enough about Boston taking Milwaukee out of the fold without shooting a single shot at a basket with Drew Holiday. Do you agree with that take?
I actually do, because I want to go back to, I believe it was September of last year. The day
Mhm.
that the news broke that the Boston Celtics had acquired Drew Holiday after they had just traded Marcus Smart to the Memphis Grizzlies, I said it to Celtic fans then that this was a monstrous upgrade. And I don't want to hear a single Celtic fan complain and cry about, we miss Marcus Smart. Stop it. This move was absolutely warranted, especially after losing game 7 in Eastern Conference Finals against the Miami Heat, nearly coming back from 0-3 down. And I said this at the time, that you're getting someone. Yes, I get you traded away someone who just won the Defensive Player of the Year award, only the second guard to do it since Gary Payton in '96. Marcus Smart did it in 2022. But I knew that this was needed. A major shakeup, a major change was needed. So the Celtics and Brad Stevens, and credit to Brad Stevens for even having the balls to actually make this kind of move, because I guarantee you that Danny Ainge does not make this move. He doesn't make this kind of move at all. So when the Celtics went out and they got a Holiday, I knew right away that, number one, you got someone who has credibility. He's won an NBA championship. He was a major part of the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks run to the title, playing alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo and obviously Bobby Portis Jr. and that entire squad. Number two, the number one thing that I have been complaining about for years with the Celtics since Tatum and Brown arrived, they don't have a player that has won anything. And I was so angry after the 2020 Eastern Conference Finals, where it was played in the bubble, obviously. And I remember saying this on Boston local or radio airways at the time, saying that I don't think that you can win with these two, because I was that angry. I was that frustrated. And
We've seen
I was just real quick. I was angry with the structure, the locker room makeup at that time, and I wasn't wrong. And I knew letting Al Horford go to the Philadelphia 76ers at that time was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So the Celtics going out and making the big move to acquire Drew Holiday in that trade last September, I said to myself that I think that this was going to be the biggest move yet. And they obviously went out and they acquired Kristaps Porzingis, who ended up becoming the biggest difference for the Celtics offensively when healthy on the floor.
Yeah.
But no question in my mind, throughout this postseason run, but especially in games 3 and 4, you can't sit here and tell me that the plays that Drew Holiday made were not the difference makers in this series for the Celtics, in which that they've had to come back in 3 out of the 4 games in their sweep.
Yeah, no, excellent point. And I was about to say, we've seen Matt Shukri Wrights. We follow you on Twitter. We've seen your takes on the Boston Bruins. We'll talk more puck later. I get it. You do your thing for the hockey news. It's a beautiful thing. I've seen your Believe podcast too. By the way, I got to give you some shine on that. Doing good work there too. But let me. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. Bing. There we go. So. I had to throw that in. You mentioned Kristaps Porzingis too. Like, for me, what the Celtics series where they got rid of the Pacers did for me was kind of help show me where Porzingis was a big deal. I was, and actually I think you saw it some of the previous series too. Not for nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, as somebody who, listen, even in the 90s, the East was not as superior. Less so now than then. They were far weaker in my day. I say as the old guy in the room, air quotes. But once Boston got Porzingis as well, as what I'll say, once they had established getting Drew Holiday and Porzingis, like I said, I called up Thanos. It is inevitable. We'll see you in the finals, right? I didn't watch that much Boston basketball. I even missed the games where they were here in Orlando because I had parent stuff to do. It was a whole. Let me know when it's the finals. We'll talk. We're there now, so we're talking. But with all of that in tow, like, from your perspective, as somebody who follows it closely, what kind of impact did I miss during the year that I should have seen before these playoffs that you got from Porzingis?
I would say the biggest difference or should I say the biggest impact that Porzingis has made, it has been him being on the floor stretches out the Celtics offensively. It stretches them out, meaning that they have a big man on the interior that plays both center and as well as like the forward position, but he's more of a forward. A 7-foot forward who could also shoot threes, and that creates mismatches. So when you look at when Porzingis was healthy, the point differential between the Celtics and everybody else in the NBA, historic.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a stat that I have seen all season long, but it's been even more emphatic, especially during this postseason run for the Celtics, is that like the Celtics, I think I have a plus 15. I don't remember the exact number, but it's double digits. And there are only 4 other teams in the NBA throughout the entire season that their point differential on an average night were double digits. And those previous 4 teams all won the NBA title. And I thought to myself, getting Porzingis was going to create the perfect mismatch because one, when Porzingis is healthy, he's going to give you 20 points per night. And with a team like the Celtics that already has the offensive firepower that you got from Jason Tatum, you saw the maturation with him this year as a whole and as a leader.
Right.
Jaylen Brown, the continued growth and development of him as a player both offensively, but especially defensively as well. It's not a coincidence that he got the Eastern Conference Finals MVP award. No coincidence there. But also, as much as we talk about Porzingis, the growth, or should I say the stunning growth of Derek White, I think it's been even more important because as Celtics fans, we know when we acquired him 2 years ago from San Antonio, we saw the potential that this guy could be a pretty good like 6-man and so forth, come off the bench and so forth, yada, yada, yada. But what we've seen in the last 2 years and even this entire season, including the postseason, and I said this at the time, like just at the beginning of the postseason run, that Derek White was going to probably be the biggest dark horse player that's going to make the biggest difference for the Celtics in the postseason. And I haven't been wrong so far. Porzingis, as far as I'm concerned, he gives you size, he gives you length. I mean, when and again, I talked about the mismatch. When he's shooting from 3-point land, I mean, he has a height advantage above like maybe 75, 80% of the guys in the NBA. And then don't even get me started about his ability to get inside or get in the paint and score there. His rim protection game. All that is so critical and so important. Something that I thought the Celtics they lacked last year, and they lacked 2 years ago when they went to the finals against Golden State. And they have that now, which is why, regardless of whoever they face, whether it's Dallas or Minnesota, and it's likely going to be Dallas, a healthy Porzingis, go ahead and hang banner number 18 right now. Because even though the Celtics have showed you that they can win without him, but I think he is that missing piece that they absolutely need him. Even if he's at 50%, they need him in the NBA Finals.
So first of all, let me get some out. Sick Diggy in the building, giving us our props. Good to see you in here as well. And if if the Celtics win the championship, then the organization can stand vindicated for Ime Udoka. I think it's more that they can stand vindicated for what happened with the Heat the previous year. They needed that.
Right. I think I agree. Like I think we're past that point where as like people not forgiving the Celtics for firing Ime Udoka after the scandal that went down prior to the start of the 2022-2023 season.
Right.
We're at the point now where the criticism for Joe Mazzulla a year ago was him not knowing how to make in-game adjustments and knowing when to call a freaking timeout. So to have that now, you see the growth of Mazzulla this season. I think you got to give him a lot of credit in terms of dealing with egos, dealing with the stars, dealing with like everything else that you need that was there. All that could have easily derailed this team. Egos could have gotten in the way. Oh, I'm not getting my minutes. I'm not getting my shots. Him mishandling the bench which is another major reason why the Celtics are where they are. And it's not just because of the starting five. Mazzulla has handled the bench beautifully, probably better than any other head coach in the NBA, if you ask me, because you can't tell me that what you've seen from Peyton Pritchard, what you've seen from Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett has been any less important than what you've seen from Derek White. What you've gotten off the bench has made this team even more dangerous. And there is a reason why I have had this belief going back to at the beginning of this calendar year. Once it became clear that the Celtics, there's no comparison to any other team in the league, it was going to be championship or bust. Yeah. But if you ask me, just name one aspect where I think the Celtics, Joe Mazzulla deserves most credit for, his handling of the bench. I cannot emphasize how important that's been, and why I think we've had the best bench in the league this year. Like, I mean, and then also, don't forget, Brad Stevens went out and acquired Xavier Tillman to be part of that bench, and he's helped contribute as well to the Celtics' run to the finals up until this point.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the road to the championship and championship or bust statement is what I should say.
Right.
And let's go through it real quick for those that that need the reminder. Right, first round you come in, Heat without Hemi, over and above the vengeance factor took place. He gone. The situation where you got the next round with the Knicks. Tibbs
with the Cavaliers, like with what the Cavaliers with Donovan Mitchell was out.
Yeah. You know what? I got it mixed up because there's so many injuries that are a factor in playoffs. Thank you for getting me right. And watching Donovan Mitchell, by the way, just the previous week drop 50 on the Magic, even when his threes weren't hitting, is mind-blowing stuff. Like, if they didn't already have such an awesome roster, I would think like, hey, yo, Donnie, you want to come to Boston? Hey, and I would say, no, I want to cover him here in Orlando. That's a separate question. Anyway, so Donovan Mitchell with the Cavs. Thank you for setting me right there. Certainly not the toughest matchup, but hey, the advantage of good seeding by dominating the East. I don't know if the Magic would have given you a harder time or not. I would say probably not, except they lost Donovan Mitchell, right? So either way, no illusions you were going to get past that round. And then to end up with the Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton being a factor. I mean, by the way, if things go the way it looks like they are in the West, Luka Doncic also has been dealing with knee stuff. I mean, buddy, you got to admit, at this point, there's an awful lot of pressure on the Celtics. Should they not get it done, Boston public proper is not going to let them hear the end of it, right?
Oh, no question. Like, the pressure is by far been the greatest now than it's ever been. And I think there's a lot of factors as to why that is. The first reason is because, number one, this has been an organization that has gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe was 6 out of the last 8 years.
6, right, yeah.
This has been an organization with Tatum and Brown being the two faces of the Boston Celtics that have come close. They were inexperienced in 2022, 2 years ago, against Golden State. And it showed in Game 4, and that faithful Game 4 where the Celtics were up 6 points with 7:29 remaining in that game. And then you also add in another reason why the pressure has never been greater is because you have the best team yet. And this team, I would dare even say, is built to contend for a championship. I would say they should be championship favorites for the next 5 years if we're being 1,000% real. Like, this is no shot at the New York Knicks, who they are clearly up and coming. This is no shot at the Indiana Pacers. They're not going anywhere. But the way that this team is locked up and is going to be locked up for the next several years, it's very hard for me to envision that if the Celtics do not win come, let's say, 2-3 weeks from now, that the criticism is going to be like quite vicious, if you will.
Yeah.
Because there has been so much buildup. There's been so much that's been invested into this team that the questions, now I will say this, the question has been asked and it's fair. If not now, then when?
Right.
If
Right.
because again, you have everything laid out in front of you. Like you can't, and this is part of my frustration. It has nothing to do with the Celtics, but
Right.
the national perception of this team is you've had an easy like route to the finals. That's not the Celtics' fault that teams have had injuries at the worst freaking time. That's not the Celtics' fault that Jimmy Butler got hurt. That's not the Celtics' fault that Donovan Mitchell got hurt. It's not the Celtics' fault that Tyrese Halliburton got hurt prior to game number 3 and could not play in game 3 and game number 4. That's not their fault. That's not their fault that the teams that they were lined up to go up against, like, listen, it was a gentleman's sweep the first 2 rounds, but the 4-game series in the conference finals was a lot closer than what meets the eye.
Yeah.
But I will tell you in conclusion that Tatum and Brown, and it's been a conversation literally from day freaking 1. You have to get it done. When they won the conference finals a couple of days ago, I was happy as hell. But the common message from Celtic fans, media, is job not done. You got 4 more to go. When they do, I don't think there should be any sort of discussion as to, well, the Celtics, well, like, no, because they've literally answered every naysayer and doubter there is up until this point. The only thing left is to win the finals.
Yeah. Now, and we'll get back, put a pin in that. I want to get back to that in a minute. Like, there's a couple things you said there. First of all, I don't think it's criticism of the Celtics per se. Obviously it is. I mean, listen, not that your own local Boston media there doesn't do their part to make Boston fit.
Oh yeah.
But it's certainly trendy for Boston to be on the villain side of things, and with the Patriots being where they are, they found a new Boston franchise. That's just kind of where I live. And I mean, listen, when it was the Patriots, I had my own issues with certain aspects of national media and certain people, alleging this person or that person's the greatest at this or that and the other thing. It's a whole other question. Right. We've said we were going to have that episode. We just haven't gotten to it, Shuk. I'm just saying. But for me, I think it's more about the national media and the fans' lack of faith in Tatum than it is about the Celtics in this case. I think it's because he's not that star. How many times have you heard he doesn't have the killer instinct? Oh, and that's the whole thing. Whether you agree with it or not, I think that's the part that kind of draws this in. People don't believe because Tatum is the face. And I think that kind of puts it in a scenario where they are being coached in such a fashion by Missoula that they're not relying on just one dude necessarily because they have this roster. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it angers me because Tatum hasn't been the problem at all.
Right.
May I remind everybody that Jason Tatum just averaged 31 points per game this past Eastern Conference Finals.
Thank you for that.
Like this postseason run so far, he's averaging like damn near 30 points per game. So the idea that Jason Tatum, I don't know about him, like he doesn't have the killer instinct, I think it's false. I genuinely think it's false because this season in itself, Tatum has showed me that he's gotten far and away better as a passer than he was in previous years. Tell me I'm freaking wrong. He's gotten better as a passer. And that in itself has created more offensive opportunities for guys like Derek White to grow in their game, for Jaylen Brown to continue to elevate offensively, for newcomers like but then also to watch guys like Kristaps Porzingis, to be able to fit into his role perfectly. So for me, like the thought that especially from the national perspective, Tatum is not doing this. Tatum is like you're nitpicking because. I'm sorry to break it to you. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Which one is it? He can't win because the Celtics, let's be honest, the Celtics right now, everything is screaming. This team is literally about to win the championship. Literally. It's not to sound cocky, but there have been few times in sports where you look at a team and you say, yeah, that team look like they're ready to win a championship right now. They're ready because they have been knocking on that door for the last 7 years, and especially in the last 2 years, they've been knocking on that door.
Right.
This team is ready, and a lot of it has to do with because of the growth of Tatum, and it's not just because he has that shooting first mentality, but again, as I mentioned, him being a facilitator, that has been overlooked, and it has not come at the cost of him being able to produce offensively because he has done that this postseason, but he's also had help. Jaylen Brown, big help. But then also when you have the backcourt, the best backcourt in the NBA with Derek White and Jrue Holiday, what more can you freaking ask for? Like, honestly, like, you don't have to rely on Tatum to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I wanted to add too. Like, and I said, I'm glad you kept going because I said it more for me than for you. I want to make sure I remember to make this point. There have been stars that have failed when they were surrounded by great help, or they had to turn into being a distributor. Like, I don't mean it seems popular to bang on James Harden, but he is perfectly guilty for being one of those dudes that when it was time to not be the star, to share the rock in his younger days, he wasn't always that dude.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Tatum has jumped in and metamorphosized himself. By the way, I didn't really think of it that way until you just said it here, so thanks for that. But like to see that he has successfully transitioned himself into being a guy that can distribute the basketball with another, I'm not going to say stars, but there's certainly a lot of well-known dudes on this roster, and it could have very easily gone awry. Hell, it took the Heatles a year to get right, air quotes, get right, through a easier path through the East and then to get shredded by the Mavericks, which will transition me nicely to this point here. I feel like a lot of teams in the West did some favors for the Celtics. This is not me cheapening the Celtics. This isn't me banging on Boston. I'm trying to be I don't want to say objective, but like as fair as possible with that point. Because I agree that they can't control that there's been a mash unit along the way on the Eastern Conference side. But Minnesota did their part to supplant the Nuggets. Okay. Dallas has done their part, and a surprise to me. Listen, I'm going to look real stupid because I didn't think Luka was going to be healthy enough to do it the way he done did it, and then he shoots it up in Rudy Gobert's face, on what was a silly and absolutely super close game. I'm not even mad. People are like, oh, Rudy Gobert got shot on, got toasted. First of all, favorable situation to have a big man in that situation covering you if you're a good shooter. B, it's Luka, man. Luka makes those shots. Anyways, all I'm about to say, I think Minnesota helped out the Celtics by taking the Nuggets out of the way. I think the Nuggets would have been a problem for Boston.
100% I agree.
And on top of that, I really feel like Minnesota getting taken out by Dallas does the same because of that size and depth and defense. I think you have the best possible matchup remaining with the Mavericks on the board, and we mentioned Luka being hurt. Do you agree with that assessment?
The best matchup left? Yeah, but like I even said it during the season that if Denver had gotten back to this point, let's just say it was Denver in the Western Conference Finals against Dallas, right? I say Denver wins that series. Let's just speak. We're obviously talking hypothetically.
Sure.
Denver, Boston. I said it literally back in, I think it was January or February, but
a lot did, yeah.
Back in the winter, that the only problematic matchup for the Celtics in the NBA is Denver, because of who do you have that could actually answer the bell successfully against Nikola Jokic?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kristaps Porzingis, but Porzingis is it's not slowing down Jokic. Let's be real. Who do you have that you could say that could be an even matchup against Jamal Murray? Maybe Jaylen Brown, maybe. But I have seen over the last 2 years the Celtics go to Denver and have problems winning there. I've seen this. So for me, it's like Denver's the only problem. But now Denver's out of the equation. That's not the Celtics' fault.
Right.
But you look at Dallas. And part of the reason why I think Dallas would be interesting is because it's not just Luka. Kyrie Irving, and as much, and I think that what we're gonna have happen is this: Luka Doncic is gonna get talked about a lot, but there are some real monstrous headlines that awaits us all nationally, but especially locally in Boston, where it's Kyrie against the Celtics in the NBA Finals. May I remind everybody that just 2 years ago, the Celtics played the Brooklyn Nets in round number 1, en route to the finals, and in which that they played Kyrie and KD and James Harden, that trio when they were still in Brooklyn. Fast forward now. This is a different Kyrie versus what we saw 2 years ago when he was in Brooklyn. I see a different Kyrie in which that he's matured a lot in the last year and a half. I've seen a different Kyrie where he's actually been a leader for this Dallas Mavericks team.
Right.
So say what you will. I don't give a rat's ass whether you hate him or not. I'm not talking in feelings. I'm talking based on what I've seen. This is a different Kyrie. This is a different Kyrie than what we saw when he won his only championship with Cleveland in 2016. Mm-hmm. A very different Kyrie now. So as much as we want to talk about like Luka Doncic and so forth, and but we got to talk about Kyrie as well, because for the Celtics, I think that this is probably the best matchup, but understand this as well. I think it would be a mistake to underestimate this Dallas Mavericks team, although I still obviously expect the Celtics to bring home banner number 18, but it would be a mistake to underestimate Dallas. But I do think that it would create a little bit of a challenge because of the fact that Kyrie, yeah, he's definitely made noise this postseason for the Mavericks thus far.
Yeah, to say the least. And I've even said on this show, talking about how I had Joker as my MVP. Pretty sure it would have been Embiid if he didn't get hurt. Separate conversation.
Yeah, I had Embiid prior to his injury to win MVP this season. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, we're on the page there. And I voted Joker. But if you had Luka, I ain't mad at it either. But it's not for a statistical reason. He presented as an allegedly difficult, and I'll put that in air quotes, player, as Luka is claimed to have been in the past.
Right.
To find a space where a guy like Kyrie, who has had struggles integrating in multiple other places, Boston included.
Yeah.
To then be this guy who is like, I'm not going to say Batman and Robin, but I'm going to say, two Justice.
Pretty damn close to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to say two Justice League members battling against, the rest of the league, because let's put it this way. Batman and Robin didn't dominate with their victories quite like this. Against a major villain. I'm just throwing that out there. By the way, I love you jumping aboard the comic book nerd schmack. I dig that, Shukri. But anyways,
what's that?
I say appreciate you embracing the nerd comic book schmack right there.
Of course, I understand. Like I do. You forget I'm a 90s kid, so like I know, I fully understand. Like I get it.
See, it's the beard. It makes me feel like you're younger than you are, my man. That's on me. But
I'm not upset at all. I'm not upset. Don't worry.
But with all of that in mind, my guy,
there was a comment that was made. Someone said something about Denver was different. I saw it pop up.
The same. Yeah, that's our friend Drew Willingham of Sutoba Media. Yeah.
So Denver isn't the same though. Well, in what regard though?
I mean,
he's not the same.
About them as a unique entity compared to the other remaining West opponents.
Oh, but I would also even say that Denver was the defending champions.
Yeah.
So they have that experience factor as well. Like, let's not forget that. Like, so which is why like it's easy in that regard to kind of dismiss Denver, but I'm like, no. Let's not do that.
Well, I don't think he's missing them as much as he's agreeing with you about how tough and out.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I misunderstood. Gotcha.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, no. Give Drew Willingham a little bit of credit. He has been wrong about other things I pointed him out to him in the past, like Albert Pujols making the home run record correctly when he said he wouldn't get it. That's the first time I ever got him. I'm joking with you, Drew Willingham. I know you're out there, but anyways, hey, I don't talk that much baseball. I find the opportunities when I can.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, I'll ask this because. Well, I think let me hit the mark with this. The reason I say Luka could be that MVP candidate, and I'm not mad at it, is because he helped provide that environment for Luka to shine and get reintegrated. And part of that is Kyrie getting older too. Yeah. But let me ask this, because I know you'd have the best perspective. I know there's some chirping about how you say this being a less than friendly reunion with Kyrie Irving in Boston, should that happen.
Yeah.
Give me some insight to how real that may be.
So I remember 2 years ago. Actually, I'll even take it a step back. 2021, when Kyrie infamously stepped on Lucky. Like, I mean, and I kind of like that reference there by Sick Diggy. More like Jay Garrick as the Flash and John Stewart as Green Lantern. I like that.
I do too.
I remember when Kyrie stepped on Lucky and how big of a deal it was. And at that time in 2021, what I also remember was that there were posters on street poles around the city of Boston on basically vilifying Kyrie Irving. And to be frank with you, Kyle, I have never seen this in my life in any other city that I lived in. I've lived in three. I've lived in New York, Philly, Boston. Those three, and that's it.
Oh, I forgot about Philly. Yeah, that's right.
Philly. But I have never seen anything like what we saw in Boston. What I saw with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came back to play the Celtics, the hatred and the anger came to surface to the point where Kyrie basically came out to the media and said, I mean, the Celtics are the fans of the fans. I just hope they just keep it to basketball. Basically insinuating that, well, I hope that none of them are a bunch of like racist jerks, bringing up Boston's unfortunate racist past.
Right.
So now we fast forward, and the anger and the wound is still there because he stood in front of Celtics season ticket holders in 2018-19 and told them, I'd love to come back and re-sign with you guys if you have me. And he told a straight-faced lie. And not only that season, because by the way, remember, that season you had Gordon Hayward healthy, because that season prior on opening night in Cleveland, he had that gruesome ankle injury that we all saw on national TV on TNT. And that season to end up being a surprise season with the Celtics going onto the NBA, not the NBA Finals, but Eastern Conference Finals against Cleveland. The following year, and they did this without also Kyrie Irving, who also got injured, that had that knee injury. That was the first year of Tatum and Brown and Terry Rozier, elevating the group and making a run for the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, you fast forward the following year. Everybody's back healthy. Kyrie's unhappy. Why is Kyrie unhappy? Because he's not the center of attention. He wanted to be me, and he was critical of the young stars, the young guys, Tatum and Brown, because, again, they were very, very young in their careers at that time in 2018-19. And they hadn't even begun to reach the level of maturity that they've reached now. So I think in more ways than one, there's 100% still a level of anger. And you could say that right now, if there's a singular athlete in the city of Boston who is hated the most, it's definitely still Kyrie. It's still him. Because of everything that happened and went down during the 2018-19 season, and how that season, it literally imploded, by the way. It imploded in round number 2. And that was a team that was expected to at least get to the finals. But they had to contend with Toronto, obviously, who went on to win the championship that year. Mm-hmm. So the storylines are going to be there. Kyrie returns, but this time against a Celtics team that has grown and that is very different from when he first left. Not to mention the fact that he's also grown as a leader as well on this Dallas Mavericks team. Because, again, I can't emphasize this enough. You can take your personal feelings about him. I don't care how you feel about him. But it's impossible to sit here with a straight face and honestly say that he hasn't grown throughout this entire postseason run. It's been very evident for us all to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He's
Matter of fact,
definitely
I'll give me this much credit as somebody else who recognized the growth, right? When he arrived for part of that, to be part of that reckless Brooklyn trio, right? With
yeah.
Harden and Durant, I
Yep.
knew that was going to fail, and I think he
So
was.
did I. Same here. Same here.
When I
I
saw him,
knew, and this is my reason why. Just real quick, this
go
is
for
my
it.
reason why I knew it was going to fail then, because you got to go back to the 2019 NBA All-Star game. The conversation that KD and Kyrie were having then, and when Kyrie was asked, "Were you talking to KD about possibly playing with him?" and then Kyrie got defensive,
Mhm.
and it turned out that it was the truth that he was actually he was recruiting KD to come play with him, but it wasn't going to be with the Celtics, but play elsewhere with him.
Right.
Right. So they go to Brooklyn, and they also have James Harden come there as well. And I said this to myself at the time, and I remember this in the fall of 2019, as the season was progressing, and it was clear that Kevin Durant was going to miss that entire 2019-2020 season. Kyrie Irving was going to have his own issues,
Right.
and James Harden was going to James Harden. It became clear to me that, and I said this at the time, and I remember saying this. I said, look, when they finally are healthy and they play with each other, this is not going to work, because you've seen this throughout the history of the NBA, for stars to play with each other. And obviously they weren't like, hopping from team to team to play with each other on one particular team to form a super team, obviously. But when you've seen teams with stars, and I'm talking about the 90s Bulls, I'm talking about the early 2000s Lakers, the three-peat Laker team. I'm talking about the 80s Celtics, and as well as the 80s Lakers, the only two teams in the NBA that dominated the league during that time period. They played with each other for an extended period of time. You didn't see that with Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. And obviously they said, well, we didn't need a head coach. Oh, really? They found out the hard way that they did, in fact, need a head coach. Like, and absolutely, and you're correct, Sig Diggy. Ego is what destroyed that franchise. Go ahead.
Yeah, so and all of that, I think that'll help me transition nicely. We saw Kyrie arrive. We knew that would fail. We saw him get to Dallas. I go, now, I don't. I perked an eyebrow, but I bet against it. Right? Who thought this is a good idea? Was kind of led with it. You got a guy in Luka who's allegedly difficult, and Kyrie's been Kyrie. You're expecting me to believe he's older and may have learned something. If that's true, this will work. I'm betting against it. I'm happy for the sake of Dallas Maverick fans that I did not cash in on the bet in question, right? I don't actually bet that, but you get the point in that I'm forced and compelled to recognize that growth 100%. I wanted to put in those 2 cents of knowing Brooklyn was going to be off kilter to Dallas being like, being actually happy and proud of what Kyrie has done.
And you know what's funny?
Yeah.
As much as we talk about Kyrie and Luka, I gotta give credit to like the defensive performance of this team thus far. And I'm talking about guys like Derek Lively, most notably. And I think that if you're gonna talk about the Mavericks in terms of like the growth with Kyrie and so forth, and him being a leader and so forth, like since he's arrived, I think it goes hand in hand with the culture that the Mavericks like now have in terms of like the defensive performance. Like, and I'm talking about what I've seen out of PJ Washington, for example, what I've seen from Josh Green, what I've seen from like Daniel Gafford, like amongst others. Like, and I just think that if you think about the overall culture and why Kyrie is looked more as like the leader rather than Luka is, look at what Kyrie's doing now. I see a guy that's invested, not just obviously mentally, emotionally, physically, committing. Obviously, you're going to get offense on regardless from Kyrie. That's never been a question. But defensively, he's helping making plays as well. So I think that when he first arrived in Dallas, I'm with you. I thought that this was interesting. I thought it was actually a gutsy move by Mark Cuban to say, you know what, come to Dallas, come on. I said, oh. I said, well, I guess it's going to be a matter of time before this implodes. Nope. It's actually worked out. It's actually worked out up until this point. Like, so far, it's been good. On the cusp of going to the finals for the first time since 2011.
So there you go. And listen, man, I'd be a fool to not have you jump on and talk a little bit of puck, man, because especially, I mean, I know Dallas and Edmonton are in the series. I'm going to have a guy coming next week to talk a little bit with them who writes for Dallas, but I got to get you to talk a bit about this eastern side of the conference with the Rangers and the Panthers, man. Because listen, I know the Panthers have perennially made it to the playoffs and always been that team that's seen as okay, but it's the Panthers kind of the vibe. You know what I mean?
In the last 4 years, but yeah.
Right, exactly. Okay, yeah. There's a reason he writes for the Hockey News, folks. He knows what I'm talking about. But they've tied it up 2-2 at this point. Tell me what the Panthers have to do to finish the job, or what do the Rangers need to do to prevent that from happening?
So let me first point out the fact that Preston's trophy curse is alive and well. Like, people are laughing, but it's like, no, I'm dead serious. Like, I don't know how this is why I feel like last night's game 4 overtime win for the Panthers was so huge.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the fact that this was 3 straight games that have gone to OT, games 2, 3, and then last night's game 4.
Playoff hockey, my man.
There's nothing like playoff hockey. It's nothing like playoff hockey in all of professional sports, bar none, period. The reason why I thought it was huge was because when you are making mistakes like the New York Rangers were, and you actually got away with a penalty shot not being called on that game-winning goal that was scored by Sam Reinhart. It should have been a penalty shot, if we're being honest, but it wasn't. But I also would say that out of all the issues to nitpick, man, the penalty kill has been problematic for the Rangers at times. And I do think that you got to give credit to Florida's power play, because I like what I've seen from Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Reinhart, most notably those two. But it's not just those two. Is how have they handled Sam Bennett, who he is the Panthers' version of Brad Marchand. And then don't forget, and I want to say this at the risk of angering Ranger fans, the best defenseman, in my opinion, in this playoff series is not Adam Fox. It's actually Gustav Forsling. And I feel like Gustav Forsling has been overlooked for quite some time now, but it's effing time that you start giving him his flowers. Like, no, he's that good. He's that freaking good. And his impact in the series has been noticeable up until this point. And you ask the question, what will the Rangers or the Panthers have to do in order to win this series? For the Rangers, you start strong, you finish strong. Because the Rangers have had a really strange series where they'll look really good one period, but then they'll look bad the next.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to what I've seen between Dallas and Edmonton. Very similar. Whereas I'll give you an actual case in point. Game 3, in period number 1, I thought Edmonton looked really good. They were forcing the issue. They were driving to the net. They were creating offensive opportunities until the second period. It said, "Here comes Jason Robertson. Hi, remember me?" And then he just basically went off for the hat trick. Now, what you're seeing between the Rangers and the Panthers is that the Rangers, you gotta play a complete 60-minute effort. The goaltending, I'm not worried about. The goaltending has not been the issue for either side. Start there. Play a full 60-game effort if you're the Rangers. For the Panthers, what you need to do is stay out of the penalty box, please. Play physical, but stay out of the penalty box. because I just feel like this series has been so freaking close that all it takes is just one bad bounce of the puck and it could go either side. But I've also said this on Twitter, and I've said this and I'll say it again. If you're a Ranger fan, after last night's game, I think you should be concerned. There is part of me that feels like you should be concerned because of the President's Trophy aspect. Because of the fact that, again, this is not your run-of-the-mill opponent that they're facing in the Eastern Conference Final. This is a team that just got to the Cup Final a year ago. They're comfortable in these situations. The further along the series goes, the more it's going to favor the Panthers because of the experience factor. Say what you will about the Magic with the Rangers so far, and look, I really have enjoyed watching. I've enjoyed seeing what I've seen from Chris Kreider and as well as Mika Zibanejad, but this Panthers team has got experience, and I think that matters the further along you go deeper in this series. So it's now a best of 3, and we know for a fact there's going to be a game 6, but it's going to be so much fun to watch. The intensity ramp up at MSG in game 5 tomorrow night. It's going to be fun.
And listen, I can't front on it, but like playoff hockey, 2-2 series, you already know you're guaranteed at least 6. That's the kind of stuff you want as a hockey fan outside of the state of Florida and New York. And I'll leave that at that. Yeah, absolutely. And man, listen, I'm not even going to add to that. There's a reason you write for the Hockey News, because you do a lot of good work covering puck and basketball. I'm limiting it to the various things you tell. Tell the people where you can be found, Shukri Wrights.
I appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at Shukri Wrights. You can find me on TikTok also at Shukri Wrights. And you can find me on Instagram at SWrightsRadio _ find me, and as well as like whenever I do podcasts for Believe, and as well as my personal podcast, the Shukri Wrights podcast on iHeartRadio as well.
Hey man, listen, always love having you on. Always love that I met you back in the day, and that we do this now as older men talking comic book schmack from the 90s. What can we say? Hey, listen, you know it's going to be time to preview the Patriots soon on this channel. I'm going to get you in here for that. You know that now.
I know. I'm expecting it. I mean, right now, obviously, like you have like the OTAs, but I'm like itching for July. I'm not rushing the summer by any stretch of the imagination. Like summer, take your time, but I'm ready for training camp because once training camp starts, in my mind, football season started. It's like, okay, because at this point, conversation is all about the training camps across all 32 teams across the NFL. So I'm ready. I can't wait.
I can't put it any better than that. An honor, joy, and privilege to have you in, Shukri Wrights. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at the SOTG. Find me on the Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Black and Gold banner at the 3-point conversion and Jaguar Report. Speaking of trading camps and OTAs, am I right? And also my work on Friday nights at 11 with Big Cat Country's Travis Holmes doing the Duval Dive. A lot of fun times. Of course, my work covering the Magic, which isn't really happening right now because they're not in the playoffs, but also look for another upcoming episode of me jumping on the panel with the Huddle Up podcast, doing some off-season action. So, of course, looking to the comments, thank you to Sick Dicky, Drew Willingham for jumping in. Thank you to Shukri Wrights, and an awesome time talking sports with everybody. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.